This was very different from her previous attitude in front of him. Like the last time in the car when he ordered her to take off her clothes, even though she was reluctant, she still endured the humiliation and did as she was told. Seeing this, Jiang Nianyan frowned. "Didn't you hear me?" Yunyan lowered her head, furrowing her brow, and fiddled with her fingers. "I don't want to." Jiang Nianyan seemed to hear a joke. "What?" "The clothes are dirty, and they smell too much of alcohol. I don't want to change." Yunyan didn't know why she was being so stubborn, and also didn't know if it was because she was in the remote wilderness, but she actually dared to talk back. Jiang Nianyan stared at her, silent. Yunyan didn't look at him either, just fiddling with her fingers, her heart in turmoil. "Are you trying to make me throw you out?" After a while, Jiang Nianyan threatened softly. Yunyan glanced out the car window, a black expanse, the only light coming from the headlights, stretching into the boundless darkness. To be honest, she wasn't very sure about Jiang Yanyan's current temperament, especially after witnessing him ordering Lao Lu to remove someone's fingers. Perhaps she had never understood him. She knew Jiang Yanyan was ruthless, but she used to think his ruthlessness was for defense. Now that he had power in his hands, he had even more power to be ruthless. His ruthlessness was hidden beneath a calm surface, able to make people wish they were dead without a sound. In contrast, Zhang Xianwen wasn't as ruthless as him, at most just a scoundrel. Like Zhang Xianwen could use his power to retaliate against a Zhou for his own selfish desires, and even keep a Zhou inside for several years. That was Zhang Xuanwen's limit. That was also why she dared to turn against Zhang Xianwen at the club, and more importantly, because Jiang Yanyan was there. In his words, before he got bored with her, she was safest by his side. But if Jiang Yanyan told her he would get rid of a Zhou, she would believe him. So she still couldn't easily offend Jiang Yanyan. Just as Yunyan was considering whether he could really throw her out, Jiang Yanyan leaned over. "Yunyan, I only helped you out of a tight spot, not gave you courage." Yunyan felt a chill creeping in along her ear, not knowing if it was because of his closeness or because of his words. Immediately afterwards, Jiang Yanyan put his arm around her waist, lowering his head, his handsome face buried in her neck. The next second she felt a pain in her neck. He actually bit her. Just as she was about to cry out in pain, he released her, his lips touching the skin of her neck, and whispered, "I hate the scent of other people on you. Change into your own clothes." Yunyan thought, "I'm wearing the waitress's uniform. If there's the scent of other people, it would be women." But she didn't dare say these words easily. She felt his patience had reached its limit. Yunyan took the clothes. The alcohol smell had faded a lot, but even a little bit of the smell could make her think of what happened at the club. With difficulty, she took off the clothes she was wearing. She lowered her head, not looking at Jiang Yanyan, but she could feel his gaze, unrestrained, without any disguise. Then she grabbed her own clothes and quickly put them on. But she suddenly remembered Jiang Yanyan's previous words. It's not so easy to put back on clothes that have been taken off. Yunyan didn't raise her head during the process of changing. She thought she had already lost all face. But in reality, she was still maintaining that little bit of pitiful self-esteem. After she finished putting on her clothes, Yunyan was about to fold the clothes she had taken off, but Jiang Yanyan beat her to it, took the clothes, put them in a bag, and then lowered the car window and threw the whole bag of clothes out. Yunyan stared at the clothes that disappeared into the night in an instant, and for some reason her scalp tightened. It was as if he had thrown away not clothes, but her. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. The car was silent. It took Yunyan a long time to look up at Jiang Yanyan, although it was just a casual glance. Jiang Yanyan was staring at her. In the dim light, his face was first submerged in the dark light, but his eyes were very bright, burning and compelling, yet deep and unfathomable. She quickly lowered her eyes and looked out the car window. But it was too dark outside the car window, and it could only vaguely reflect Jiang Yanyan's figure. Although he was sitting there without moving, he exerted enough pressure. Yunyan felt a tightness in her chest. After a long while, Jiang Yanyan spoke, his voice deep. "Are you familiar with the people in the club?" Yunyan shook her head. Except for Zhang Xianwen. She hadn't had contact with anyone else, but there were some familiar faces. They should be friends who played well with Zhang Xianwen, and often went in and out of commercial banquets with Zhang Xianwen. Yunyan quickly realized the strangeness of Jiang Yanyan asking this question. She turned to look at him and asked, "What do you mean, young Master Jiang? Don't you already know what I mean?" The corner of Jiang Yanyan's mouth was tinged with coldness. He reached out and pinched her chin, asking word by word, "Have you had anything to do with any of them?" Although Yunyan realized the intention behind his question, she was still hurt when she heard him ask so clearly. Her heart felt like it had been cut by a knife. "In your eyes, am I that Pukan, unbearable, dissolute?" She stared into his eyes and asked. Jiang Yanyan smiled slightly, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He let go of her hand, but didn't withdraw his gaze, his eyes still entangled with her face. I've heard a lot about Miss Yu's scandalous affairs. The most exciting one was at a private yacht party, where Miss Yu's wonderful body was the talk of the men present. Yun Yin frowned. A private yacht party? Jiang Yin stared at her expression and sneered. Or have you attended too many of these types of parties that you can't remember which one it was? Yun Yin's breathing quickened slightly, and she suppressed her emotions. It's normal for me to attend a lot of private yacht parties. Those socialites host them in rotation every month, and I've organized quite a few myself. I really don't know which one young Master Jiang is referring to. As for the men present commenting on my figure, people can say whatever they want. How can I control that? The light in Jiang Yin's eyes was frighteningly deep, but he moved closer to her. Those men not only commented on your figure, but also praised your skills in bed, gloating and sharing with each other. Miss Yu is truly a treasure to them. Yun Yin was stunned when she heard this. This moment of being stunned caused Jiang Yin's expression to completely cool down, and he ridiculed. So you remembered? Were you there? Yun Yin asked back. Jiang Yin sneered. Seeing this, Yun Yin laughed, also with a hint of ridicule. So young Master Jiang also likes to play around? And couldn't help but retort, if young Master Jiang was there at the time, why didn't you join in? The way to quickly close the distance with those rich kids is to have common topics. Isn't there common topic women? Which woman they got with today, which celebrity they dumped tomorrow. They can't brag about the power they have in their hands outside, so they flaunt their women. In the eyes of some people, women are resources to pass the time, and she's been the object they use to pass the time more than once. She was too lazy to say some things. Her reputation precedes her. When those people couldn't get her, the only thing they could do was tarnish her reputation. Yun Yin's chin was pinched painfully by Jiang Yin. His tone was cold. Miss Yu is really unrestrained. If I said I wasn't, would you believe me? Yun Yin looked directly into his eyes. The Yu family now is not what it used to be. How much is the reputation of the Yu family's daughter worth? Can it save a Yu family's past glory? What Yun Yin thinks about now is never about herself. She also doesn't like to explain to anyone. Before the Yu family had an accident, when everything was peaceful, she could still look at the people and things in this circle with cold eyes. After the Yu family had an accident, she experienced the fickleness of human nature even more. Her heart became colder and harder. In fact, the fickleness of human nature is the true face of survival. But in the past, the Yu family gave her a halo, so everyone around her became good people. Jiang Yin stared at her, silent. But he didn't let go of her like he did just now. Why Yun Yin didn't struggle either, letting him pinch her. But then she felt that the emotions in his eyes were wrong, hiding something like anger and coldness, pressing closer and becoming a suffocating wave. Yun Yin had a premonition immediately. But before the premonition could form a definite thought, she saw his handsome face pressing down, kissing her unexpectedly. Yun Yin heard a buzzing sound in her brain, followed by a blankness. Jiang Yin's kiss was aggressive, not giving her time to adapt or react. His lips were like flames, almost devouring and grinding. The man's breath was also scorching. Yun Yin was consciously panicked and subconsciously struggled. But the man's strong arms held her soft waist tightly, one hand supporting her head, forcibly attacking. She cried out in pain. But it made it easier for him to drive straight in, like rolling waves sweeping over her, wrapped in the man's strong and cold aura, and obvious displeasure. Yun Yin even tasted blood. Frightened, she tried her best to push him away. Unexpectedly, this time she pushed him away. Perhaps he didn't want to make things too difficult for her, just a small punishment as a warning. Punishing her for saying the wrong thing? For rejecting his face? Yun Yin felt a throbbing pain in the corner of her mouth. Yes, he didn't show any pity. If possible, she thought he would rather tear her apart. Jiang Yin was pushed away but didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and didn't force her anymore, but reached out and pinched her chin again, his thumb stroking her lips. Miss Yu's lips are really soft. Yun Yin wished she could bite off his finger. Just as this thought rose, she heard him chuckle. Don't think about biting. Want to be exposed in the wilderness? So, this thought disappeared in Yun Yin's mind. Does it hurt? Jiang Yin stared at her slightly swollen lips, the depths of his eyes still dark. Her lip shape was extremely beautiful. The lips were red and soft. It was afraid to melt when it was in the lips and teeth. But he couldn't help but want to destroy it. Such beauty should be destroyed to the death, so that she wouldn't be so perfect, so that her pride would be completely defeated, so that she would lower her proud head to him and let him trample on everything she had. He suddenly remembered his friend bragging to him. Have you tasted the taste of the Yu family's daughter? Let me tell you, I've tasted it. That taste is so good that you're willing to die. There are some women who can fascinate you even if they don't do anything, making you just want to fuck her to death to feel satisfied. The Yu family's daughter is that kind of woman. It hurts. Yun Yin told the truth. She didn't know what he was thinking. She just felt that the dark light in his eyes was frightening. Jiang Yinyan's face changed slightly. Her word hurt was very soft, almost inaudible, but it kept drilling into his ears. After a while, he let go of her hand. But even though he let go, his fingertips still retained the softness of her lips. The man returned to his cold demeanor, his voice chilling, a stark contrast to the burning, passionate outburst he'd just displayed. But Yunyan didn't think Jiang Yinyan had truly become cold-hearted. He seemed profound and impassive, yet the desire and icy cruelty flowing in his blood and straining within his bones were like a fierce undercurrent, ready to incinerate her when the volcano erupted. Yunyan reached out, her fingers trembling faintly as she grasped the wine glass. She didn't defy his intention, taking a sip. The red wine was rich and left a sweet aftertaste, lingering on her palate. "Drink it all." Jiang Yinyan leaned back, supporting the glass with one hand and swirling it. Bathing in the suggestive light of the wine, he scrutinized her. After their recent passionate kiss, her lips were as delicate as a flower, her lip pearls round and full. She wore no lipstick, yet her lip color was a bewitching pink. She lowered her gaze to the wine in her glass, the ripples of light reflecting in her eyes, like spring water shimmering. Her cheeks flushed a faint crimson, the corners of her eyes laced with a helpless resignation that only made her more alluring. Finally, she drank it. Tilting her head back, she drained the glass in one gulp, her slender neck gracefully arched, truly like an elegant swan. But even the proudest swan must bow its head, mustn't it? Her lips were slightly moist, seemingly redder now, nourished by the red wine. Jiang Yinyan recalled her earlier softness, a wave of restlessness washing over him. It seemed the more delicate she appeared, the more brutal his inner self became. Jiang Yinyan's Adam's apple bobbed, and he ordered casually, "Continue." "Young Master Yin, I don't have a good tolerance for alcohol." Yunyan's breathing quickened slightly, her slender fingers gripping the wine glass, pale. Jiang Yinyan ignored her plea, lifting his handsome chin slightly in a gesture. Yunyan was unwilling, but she could only endure her unwillingness. She bit her lower lip hard, turning her red lips pale, adding to her vulnerability. Under Jiang Yinyan's gaze, she poured herself another glass, knowing she couldn't expect him to show any compassion, and drank it down in one gulp. Her fingers hooked the wine glass, turning it upside down, not a single drop remaining. Yunyan raised her eyes, her gaze sparkling. "Is that all right, young Master Yin?" 2 glasses of red wine were quite a bit. She wasn't lying to Jiang Yinyan. She really couldn't handle alcohol well, but that didn't mean she was afraid to drink. If he was determined to make things difficult for her, she couldn't avoid it, so she simply wouldn't. Jiang Yinyan took a light sip of his wine, clearly not focused on tasting it. He said mockingly, "If Miss Yu has a weak tolerance, how did you manage to fend off everyone earlier?" Or, he raised his hand, his palm covering her cheek, his thumb gently stroking the woman's soft skin. "Are you extraordinarily gifted?" He was bluntly accusing her of being wanton. "Huh." Yunyan lowered her eyes, her long lashes concealing the shallow glimmer in their depths. When she looked up again, she was smiling. "Young Master Yin is drinking slowly. Do you want me to feed you?" Her alcohol tolerance was low, and the 2 glasses of red wine were beginning to take effect, but she wasn't drunk yet. She was still very clear-headed, but her blood and bones were gradually burning, stimulating her breathing and making her feel flushed. Wanton? What did it matter to her what he thought? What if everyone thought she was a slut? She, Yunyan, didn't care. Jiang Yinyan sensitively captured the alluring gleam in her eyes, which, even in the dim light of the car, resembled the amaryllis blooming under the vast expanse of stars. Beautiful and ruined. At that moment, she seemed determined to drag him down with her. The sinful beast within Jiang Yinyan was awakening. He didn't restrain its spread, allowing it to flood forth like a torrent. "All right," he said languidly. Yunyan smiled. There was a hint of mockery in it. Jiang Yinyan wasn't angry, waiting for her to take the initiative. Yunyan put down the empty glass in her hand, leaned closer to Jiang Yinyan with a serpentine grace. The woman was like soft jade, carrying a faint fragrance, and the addition of the light scent of wine only added to her temptation and seductiveness. She took the red wine glass from the man's hand, not feeding him immediately, but instead tilting her head back to move even closer, so close that her red lips were almost touching his. "How does young Master Yin want me to feed you?" Yunyan's eyes were alluring, her voice soft and boa noa. "Or how do other women usually serve you?" Jiang Yinyan looked down at her, a subtle curve playing at the corner of his mouth. "I thought Miss Yu had her own unique system. Everyone has different habits and different interests." Yunyan felt the alcohol gradually taking effect, making her sarcasm more direct. "I'm afraid I don't understand young Master Yan's preferences and might make you angry." Jiang Yinyan smiled, but there was an icy temperature in his eyes. You could try. Yunyan scrutinized him. His eyebrows, his cheeks, his nose, his lips. All these facial features were once so familiar to her. Her Yin, the Yin who gave her endless security, had become so estranged. Suddenly, she smiled. She raised a glass, took a sip of wine, and then offered her red lips. When her lips touched his, she vaguely felt Jiang Ninian's body stiffen slightly. But perhaps it was just her imagination. But her heart was beating wildly, perhaps because of the alcohol, or perhaps because it was the first time she had done something like this. The red wine was slowly fed to Jiang Ninian. He remained calm, watching her the entire time. He didn't react with as much passion as he had earlier when their lips touched. His lips were coated with a slightly sweet scent. The second time she fed him, Yunyan was less nervous. He still sat upright. The image of the man in a suit reflected on the car window, his face composed and cold, yet holding a beautiful woman in his arms. The visual contrast was particularly alluring. The man was restrained and proper, while the woman was enchantingly seductive. But when the woman's red lips lightly brushed his atoms apple-bobbed. Just as the woman was about to withdraw, the man gently grasped her wrist. Yunyan was stunned. But then Jiang Yinyan pulled her wrist, using the momentum to cover her hand holding the glass with his. He tilted his head back and drank the remaining wine in the glass. Immediately afterward, he cupped her head with his large hand, his lips coming down on hers. Her lips were forcibly pried open. A large mouthful of wine was forced into her mouth. Yunyan almost choked several times. Alarmed, she reached out to push him away, but he grabbed her wrists and pinned them behind her, forcing her breasts against his chest and tilting her head back to endure the invasion of his lips and teeth. Even though there was no more red wine in his mouth, he still didn't release her. Yunyan felt dizzy. The man's breath was scalding, and she protested with muffled moans several times, her breath almost being swallowed by him. Her eyes were slightly moist. Alcohol and pheromones surged through her veins, and she stopped resisting, letting the man take whatever he wanted. After a while, Jiang Yinyan released her, but she leaned limply against his chest, unable to move, her breathing rapid. Jiang Yinyan held her, chuckling softly. "Are you drunk already?" Yunyan's forehead was resting against his chest, and she didn't answer. Not drunk enough to be incoherent, but her head was starting to spin. Her ears, however, were exceptionally sensitive. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong, but noticeably faster than usual. In his chest, she could feel the smooth, firm muscles even through the fabric of his clothes and the warmth of his body. She wanted to look up at him, but she didn't have the strength to lift her head. Jiang Yinyan held her close, his thin lips lightly pressed against her full forehead, slowly moving down, chuckling, "Don't pretend to be drunk, the night is still young." Yunyan vaguely sensed the coolness when they got out of the car, her steps unsteady. A hand encircled her waist, steadying her, and she leaned against the man to keep her balance. The destination seemed familiar. When the doorman came out, Yunyan was jolted awake. Jiang Yinyan had brought her to a hotel. The hotel where they had met that night. The manager spotted Jiang Yinyan from afar, almost jogging out of the lobby, wanting to help support Yinyan. But then he heard Jiang Yinyan say, in a dismissive tone, "No need." No one dared to touch Yunyan. He picked Yunyan up in his arms and walked straight into the hotel. The moment he picked her up, the thought that flashed through Jiang Yinyan's mind was, "She's too light." It was like he was carrying nothing in his arms. The light in the elevator was blinding. Yunyan was in a daze the whole time, wanted to tell him she wanted to go home, but the words went around in her mouth several times and turned into, "Put me down, I can walk myself." Jiang Yinyan had no intention of putting her down, his arms strong, his large hands easily able to control her. Although Yinyan was a little tipsy, she wasn't completely drunk. She clearly knew Jiang Yinyan's purpose in bringing her back to the hotel. It was something she should have personally asked him for, something that should have happened that night, something she should have given him all along. He had been quite patient. She had a premonition. She wouldn't be able to escape tonight. Yunyan didn't want to escape either. Jiang Yinyan hadn't intended to take her home when he took her out of the club so late. Besides, his unpredictable mood in the car and everything that happened at the club were related, weren't they? Zhang Xianwen was a bastard, but a bastard in the sense that he didn't do anything overtly obscene, but could use the most obscene words to plant a seed of doubt in people's hearts. Inside the hotel, she was tossed directly onto the bed. The side of the bed dipped as Jiang Yinyan knelt, one knee pressing against the mattress, reaching out to undo the buttons of his shirt, his tall frame looming over her. Although she had been mentally prepared, Yunyan still nervously reached out to stop his chest from pressing down, looking up at him, only to be startled by the darkness and depth in his eyes. The alcohol had dissipated for the most part. She said with difficulty, "I want to take a shower." Jiang Ninian looked down at the woman beneath him. Her hair was loose, her eyes glistening with moisture and fear, possessing a natural allure within her purity, utterly captivating. His long lashes hid the desire in his eyes, and he sneered, "Using the same old trick?" "No." Yunyan swallowed nervously. "In the car, you said you didn't like the smell of other people on me, so I want to take a shower. Is there still any now?" Jiang Ninian sneered, burying his head in her neck. Yunyan's heart was like it was on a roller coaster. His breath was gently sprayed on her neck and collarbone, tickling and tempting. She plucked up her courage, her arms lightly wrapped around his neck, her voice soft and weak. "Young Master Yin, I beg you." Jiang Yunyan paused slightly. He raised his face slightly to look at her. Yunyan turned her face, her cheek almost touching his, creating a seemingly intimate scene. Controlling her rapid breathing, she whispered, "I've already agreed to you, so where else can I hide?" Jiang Yunyan stared at her for a long time, his expression cold. Yunyan felt unsure, and blurted out, "I'm just afraid the smell of alcohol on me will affect young Master Yan's mood." Jiang Yunyan suddenly smiled, a clear mockery in his smile. "Aren't you drunk? Shall I help you wash?" This time, Yunyan didn't deliberately drag out the time in the bathroom, unlike her mood last time, because she understood one thing at the club, and that was that she had to have a force to rely on. Otherwise, with her current self, she couldn't do anything at all. Even if she went all out for a head-on collision, it would just be like hitting a rock with an egg. The force she could rely on was Jiang Yinyan. Just like he said, as long as she was by his side, she didn't have to worry about anything. At the club, it was precisely because he was there that she dared to tear her face with Zhang Xianwen. She deliberately used Jiang Yinyan's phone to take evidence, because she knew that even if Zhang Xianwen had 10,000 guts, he wouldn't dare do anything to Jiang Yinyan. She knew that thinking and acting like this was immoral. But was it moral for Jiang Yinyan to force her to submit in order to rescue a Zhou, and then use a Zhou as her weakness to threaten her? After Yunyan finished showering, she reached out and touched the mirror. The face in the mirror was still a little red due to the alcohol, with a hint of charm in the corners of her eyes. It was this little bit of charm that, in the eyes of those men, became seductiveness, licentiousness, a deadly poison. She lowered her eyes and smiled softly. Alcohol was truly a good thing, able to numb the nerves and make her feel that there was a justifiable reason for the so-called dirty relationship. She entered the bedroom, not expecting Jiang Yinyan to have already showered. He was wearing a white bathrobe, leaning against the dark-colored sofa, his two long legs strong and powerful. The front of the bathrobe was slightly open, revealing a large expanse of chest muscles, a deep tan and sexy. He seemed to be waiting for her patiently, drinking leisurely. In his hand was a glass of whiskey with ice cubes. When he took a sip, he tilted his head slightly, his neck straight, his Adam's apple rolling sensually. One arm was resting on the sofa armrest, revealing a wrist with sexy bones, slender fingers, and faint blue veins winding up the back of his hand to his muscular arm, all disappearing into the white bathrobe sleeve. It was as if he was using civilized restraint to conceal the ruthlessness and wildness in his bones. Seeing her come out, his gaze fell on her. Yunyan had never been in contact with Jiang Yinyan like this, stripped of his noble attire, so unrestrainedly facing her. Although he wasn't bare-chested, he looked even more aloof and calm in his white bathrobe. But she knew that his desire was there, and beneath the bathrobe would be a stormy sea. To be honest, Jiang Yinyan's conditions were too good. This figure alone would make women flock to him. But he was too cold, making people afraid to approach. Yinyan sat down next to him. There was no female shower gel in the bathroom, so she felt that the scent on her body was very similar to his. There was a faint scent of pine and cypress, pure and noble, just like the scent on Jiang Yinyan's body. But it wasn't exactly the same. Although Jiang Yinyan, who had also showered, used the same shower gel, in addition to the scent of pine and cypress, there was also a faint scent of leather. Just like the feeling he gave people, a restrained surface, a ruthless and obsessive core. Jiang Yinyan was still leaning there, his arm reaching over, his slender fingers gently lifted the collar of her bathrobe. Seeing that she was wearing nothing underneath, he seemed satisfied and smiled slightly. Yunyan raised her chin, her beautiful neck white and smooth. The collar of her bathrobe, which Jiang Yinyan had just lifted, was also loose, revealing skin as white as jade, dazzling the other person and making it impossible for them to look away. "Can I have some wine?" Yunyan asked softly. She didn't come out in her own clothes, but wrapped herself directly in a bathrobe. Since she had already reached this point, there was no need to be coy. But she was still nervous, and she needed to use alcohol to numb herself again. Jiang Yinyan didn't object and handed her the glass. She reached out to take it, but he didn't let go. "Drink it like this." Yunyan was slightly stunned, glanced at him, and then lowered her head and drank, following the strength of his hand. He controlled the glass, feeding her little by little. The strong liquor, even a small mouthful swallowed, felt like burning the esophagus, stimulating Yunyan and causing her to frown. Jiang Yunyan didn't plan to force her to drink and asked, "Want more?" Yunyan stared at the hand holding the glass, with its distinct tendons, a hand skilled at control. She nodded and drank. The man laughed softly above her head. "Miss you. Are you getting drunk here with me?" Yunyan raised her eyes to look at him. Is young Master Yin reluctant to part with this little bit of wine? Jiang Yunyan wasn't annoyed either and raised his glass to signal to her. She leaned over and took another sip, thinking to herself, as long as the alcohol took effect, that would be good. Alcohol emboldened the timid. She didn't want to watch herself sink into an abyss of no return while sober. She simply grabbed Jiang Yunyan's wrist and emptied the glass in one gulp. This mouthful was drunk quickly and in large amounts, and she almost vomited when swallowing it, getting wine on the corners of her mouth. Jiang Yunyan looked at her, her face slightly lowered, her cheeks flushed, her beautiful eyebrows furrowed because of the alcohol, but it added to her charm. The tips of her long hair were still damp, a few strands drilling into the collar of her bathrobe, extending towards her perfect cleavage, enticing and captivating. Jiang Yunyan reached out and raised her face, his thumb gently rubbing the wine from the corner of her lips, and then pried open her lips and teeth, probing inside. Yunyan didn't resist, letting his fingers grind against her lips and entangle with her tongue. Gradually, her breathing became rapid, obedient like a cat, yet as charming as a fox. Jiang Yunyan felt that the skin beneath his fingers was very soft, as smooth as milk. The woman in front of him had alluring eyes, yet she was pure and unfamiliar. For a moment, his chest felt irritable, and that familiar feeling of wanting to destroy, to trample fiercely, surged forth. He let go of her hand. His faint voice was quietly tinged with a hint of hoarseness, ordering, "Come here, be proactive." Yunyan's hand hanging at her side unconsciously clenched the corner of her bathrobe, clenching it until her palm was sore before gradually releasing it. She leaned forward and offered her red lips. Her lips gently traced the corners of the man's sensual thin lips. His lips were slightly cool, with a faint hint of alcohol. He lowered his eyes to look at her, the shadows cast by his long eyelashes concealing his emotions. He looked very calm. Yunyan felt a little dizzy. Being close to him, his scent, his desire, and the sense of oppression emanating from his body surrounded her layer upon layer. It was male hormones intertwining with the fragrance on her body, adding to the ambiguity. Her lips followed his chin all the way down, kissing his Adam's apple. His Adam's apple rolled once, his large hand lifting open her bathrobe, caressing the small of her back. It was itchy, yet full of desire. Yunyan subconsciously twisted her waist, but his large hand held her in place, unable to move. Her temples throbbed with pain, one beat after another. She felt that the alcohol was starting to take effect, plus the lingering effects of the red wine from before. Her lips swam like a fish. Her fingers trembled as she untied his bathrobe belt. The next moment, she gasped in surprise. She quickly averted her eyes, but her heart was pounding wildly, and the scene she had just seen was still in her mind, shy at the same time as being desperately nervous and also faintly afraid. Jiang Yunyan raised her face, seeing her flushed face and deer-like fear in her eyes. He smiled slightly. Miss Yu's reaction is very gratifying to a man. Yunyan was very flustered, thinking to herself, "It's not my reaction that makes a man proud. It's you. You are very proud. Anyone would have this kind of reaction. His assets are quite substantial." The man leaned closer to her and whispered, "Compared to the men you've had before?" Yunyan's lips trembled. I don't have those men. She would rather have had some men." Jiang Yunyan's burning breath fell on her face. It's pointless to use the pure persona too much. "I'm not. Get on." Jiang Yunyan didn't want to listen to her explanation, and he didn't need her explanation at this time. He released her, leaned back against the sofa, his two long legs firmly supporting him, and commanded in a deep voice. The man's strong body, a strong invitation. Yunyan felt her breath getting tighter and tighter, and after a long time, she awkwardly sat on him. But what next? She was nervous, she was afraid, and she didn't know how. She simply wrapped her arms around him, pressing her entire upper body against his chest. The man's lips had just been slightly cool, but his chest was burning hot, not much lower than the temperature on her body. She said softly, "Young Master Yin, how about you guide me?" She didn't dare to look up at him. She must be looking at her with eyes that wanted to kill her. But in reality, fierce desire was rolling in the eyes above her head, a greed that could devour her. "Yuh, I really—" Yunyan was afraid that he would be angry, so she hurriedly raised her head and interrupted him, sincerely, I swear. But she was frightened by the deep desire in his eyes. Jiang Yinyan would be a fool to believe her, but he was also really running out of patience. He ripped off her bathrobe, showing no pity at all. Immediately afterwards, he got up and picked her up. Yinyan felt dizzy at this moment. He was too tall, holding her up like a child. She felt so far from the ground. She was really afraid that he would fling her out in a fit of anger, and that would really hurt if she fell. Unconsciously, she tightly hugged the man's neck, and her legs also circled his waist without loosening. Jiang Yinyan's body tensed up, and he sneered in his heart, pure, she's holding on tight enough. Playing hard to get, really good at grasping men's psychology. He threw her on the bed. Yinyan almost threw up all the wine in her stomach. Before she could recover, the man pressed down on her. The light in the room was dim, and the figures of the man and woman overlapped and intertwined on the wall, until Yinyan cried out in pain. The man also stiffened instantly, and after a moment, he reached out and turned her face, looking at her in disbelief. Ew. The woman's forehead and back were aching with pain, and a thin layer of sweat had broken out. Her eyelashes were trembling violently, and the corners of her eyes were wet. Jiang Yinyan stared at her, his chest heaving, his eyes filled with uncontrollable rolling black waves. Yinyan's lips trembled. Young Master Yin, please you. She couldn't say the words, be gentle in the end. She felt that it was pretentious. He had been making things difficult for her in every way. Did he still care about these things? You haven't before? Jiang Yinyan asked in a cold voice, but the veins on his neck and forehead were bulging, indicating extreme endurance and restraint. Actually, it was a redundant question. Just looking at her reaction, he knew, and she was really, her whole body was extremely tight. Yinyan hummed in response, and then buried her face in the quilt, the tears that had come out of pain soaking the sheets along the corners of her eyes. Her soft hum, like a cat's tiny voice, could scratch the man's heart. Jiang Yinyan gritted his teeth, his voice hoarse. Yinyan, you really have something, you're good. He leaned down, his burning hot thin lips touching the still wet corners of her eyes, his hoarse words still revealing a hint of ferocity, pinching her soft waist. Yinyan felt like she only had one breath left. She survived on that one breath, not killed by Jiang Yinyan's vigorous energy. When she opened her eyes again, the sky outside the window was splashed with red clouds, making her feel dazed for a long time. She looked at the time on the wall and realized that she had slept until almost dusk. Her whole body ached on the bed, and even a slight movement made her feel pain everywhere. Last night, or rather, the intimate and beautiful scenes after midnight today, poured in her mind again. Once upon a time, Yin was the topic of much gossip among the servants in the Yu family. When that thin young boy grew to be 16 or 17 years old, his body already possessed the solid and strong power of a man. At that time, Yunyan hadn't yet begun to think about romance. She liked Yin's body because she liked Yin carrying her on his back. When she was tired of walking, afraid of getting her skirt dirty, or bored of riding in the car, Yin would squat down and say concisely and happily, "Get on." She would then jump onto his back with joy, feeling very satisfied when he carried her. She would hug Yin's neck, turn her face to ask him, "Can you always carry me? As long as I'm tired, you'll be there, and you'll always carry me." Yin didn't like to smile, but whenever she turned her face to talk to him, his cheeks seemed to blush slightly. He said, "Miss will one day not need Yin to carry her." She shook her head, hugging him even tighter. "I just like being carried by Yin. Yin's shoulders are so broad. It's especially comfortable to be carried by Yin." It felt particularly safe. At that time, Yin felt that she wasn't afraid of so many bad people outside, because she had Yin. Others might harm her, but Yin never would. Last night, Jiang Yinyan's get-on was no longer the pure thought of Yin from the past. That young boy who used to carry her on his back, last night acted wantonly on her body, enjoying complete satisfaction. Yinyan felt a sour pain in her lower abdomen again. Once Jiang Yinyan shed his refined and abstinent exterior, he was nothing but greedy and wild, like a forest hunter dismembering his prey and swallowing it whole. He was too big. At that moment, Yunyan truly felt like she was going to be killed. Did he have anger, simply because last night was her first time, and that completely destroyed his belief that she was dissolute? It hurt. Her body felt like it was being torn apart from the middle. But Yunyan felt that Jiang Yinyan wasn't having an easy time either. He entered with difficulty, veins bulging on his forehead, and the muscles in his arms, which tightly embraced her, were tense. When she painfully accepted him, beads of sweat slid from his forehead onto her chest, scalding hot. At first, he did give her time to adjust, but soon he was riding passionately, and she wanted to live, and she wanted to die. Yunyan got up. A rush of hot liquid flowed out, very slippery. Her face turned pale, her breathing became rapid, and her lower abdomen was swollen again. She entered the bathroom and saw her reflection. Red marks bloomed on her collarbone and chest, and her slender waist and thighs were covered in bruises. The man had been unrestrained on the bed, wanting to mold her into all sorts of positions. Hot lips pressed against her neck, his voice hoarse and low, with a slight pang of desire, his large hands almost breaking her waist. He wanted her to relax, not to be so tense. But she couldn't relax. The more he attacked, the more she defended, and then he became even more frenzied, saying in a low voice, "Little thing, do you want to bite me to death?" Yun Yin's breathing became rapid again. Looking at herself in the mirror again, her cheeks were flushed, her chest rising and falling, like a fire burning in her body. After taking a bath, she felt even more exhausted. She changed into a new bathrobe, and as soon as she came out of the bathroom, she saw Jiang Yin pushing open the door and coming in. She immediately froze in place, her lower abdomen contracting instinctively. Compared to her physical and mental exhaustion, Jiang Yin looked radiant after his carnal satisfaction. He had returned to his abstinent and cold appearance, wearing a well-fitting shirt and black suit pants, which made his legs look very long. The shirt concealed his bulging muscles, making him appear indifferent and desireless, perfectly fitting the outside world's evaluation of him as a cold and detached monk. Only she had truly experienced the terrifying depths of his desire. But Yun Yin's ears inexplicably burned, and she didn't dare to look at him for a moment. Awake, Jiang Yin came in to find her. The housekeeper sent over dinner. Come to the table to eat. They had returned to the hotel from the clubhouse late last night, and Yun Yin only now realized that she hadn't eaten a bite of food. Jiang Yin's reminder made her feel hungry immediately. It wasn't really dinner time yet, because it was only approaching dusk. Once upon a time, Yun Yin didn't like this time of day. She always felt that dusk, though beautiful, was actually desolate, the prelude to the upcoming lighting of thousands of homes. But her home was no longer there. The dining table was next to an arched floor-to-ceiling window, and the afterglow of the sunset fell in perfectly cozy and warm. Jiang Yin sat there, his slender figure draped in a large swath of sunset glow. Yun Yin sat down opposite him, and as soon as she touched the chair, she frowned slightly. It hurt, but she forced herself to endure it without making a sound. Yun Yin didn't know how other men and women behaved after carnal affairs. She tried to appear natural, not revealing too much emotion in front of him. It was just a transaction. Wasn't this going to happen sooner or later? Still hurt. The man opposite suddenly spoke. Yun Yin didn't expect him to ask that suddenly. She was stunned for a moment and said, "Still hurt." Only when she spoke did she realize that her throat hurt terribly. She subconsciously raised her hand and rubbed her throat. From shouting, Jiang Yin stared at her fingers, stroking her throat, slender and white, so soft they could be crushed. Before dawn, in the darkness of the night, her fingers weakly pressed against his chest, unable to provide any resistance. Her voice was small at first, but the moment he possessed her, she cried out in surprise, which was the most beautiful sound in his ears. Her light sobs, calling out like a delicate cat, stirred up the power in his chest, making him want to tear her apart. Incredibly soft, Jiang Yin had never felt so comfortable and refreshed as he did today. Her tightness, her tenderness, could completely kill him. Jiang Yin had always had strong self-control, but he lost control again and again on her body. If he didn't know that it was her first time, he would have agreed with those men's words. A gentle village is a hero's grave, which is indeed true. Pure to the extreme, but also charming to the extreme. The wide sleeves of her bathrobe revealed a section of snow-white arm with red marks on it. Jiang Yin saw it in his eyes. It was when she struggled under him that he had held her wrists and violently pinned her in his arms, continuing to plunder wantonly. Yun Yin met his gaze and unnaturally reached out to pull down her sleeves. Jiang Yin knew that she was very sensitive, and even a slight bump would leave a bruise for several days. "Why didn't you say so?" He spoke again. Yun Yin picked up her soup spoon, and after a long pause, she realized what he was asking. She said softly, "Young Master Yin believes what he wants to believe. Is it useful for me to say anything? I told you, but you didn't believe me." She slowly drank the soup. The soup was clear and not greasy, relieving the soreness in her throat. Jiang Yin was silent. Yun Yin didn't look up at him. She just wanted to eat. The man opposite had emptied her out, and she needed to replenish her strength as soon as possible. The atmosphere during the meal was very quiet. If it weren't for the occasional clinking of cutlery, Yun Yin would have thought that Jiang Yin had already left. He didn't like to talk while eating. He was A Yin. In the Yu family for so many years, Yun Yin had only eaten once with A Yin. That was when she was studying abroad, and her father, worried about her safety, had ordered A Yin to follow her. That day, she was bored and found a small restaurant to eat, insisting that Yin sit down and eat with her. Yin was worried that the food in the small restaurant wasn't sanitary, so she threw a small tantrum. Yin had no choice but to sit down and eat with her. The Yu family always had a chef, and she had grown up eating the food prepared by her own chefs. Even when she ate out, it was always in high-end restaurants with exquisite ingredients. She had never thought that the food in a dingy restaurant could be so delicious. She was extremely happy that night. Yin, on the other hand, didn't actually eat much when he sat down. He was always taking care of her, helping her disinfect the cutlery with hot water and then serving her food. She chattered nonstop, and he listened with a smile. As a result, her pampered stomach turned on her that night, causing her to sweat profusely in the middle of the night. The ambulance was stuck on the road for a long time, and Yin carried her all the way to the hospital. After she was given an injection and the pain subsided, she nervously hugged Yin's arm and said, "I thought I was going to die." Yin, despite being exhausted from running around, gently stroked her head and said, "Greedy." So, the current Jiang Yin was even more silent when he ate. But in the end, it was Jiang Yin who broke the silence. How did those nasty rumors spread? Yin was surprised and looked up at him, not expecting him to pursue this matter. She opened her mouth and said, "Young Master Yin, do you believe it now? Aren't you afraid that I had surgery to repair it on purpose to deceive you?" "I can feel it." Jiang Yin frowned, appearing particularly serious. "Based on your reaction in bed, the phrase experienced is 100,000 miles away." She didn't know if this was sarcastic or not, but Yin couldn't help but mumble. "You thought I had no experience and still did it? Didn't you stop?" It was just a soft mutter, purely to vent her dissatisfaction. Unexpectedly, Jiang Yin chuckled, his expression meaningful. "Couldn't help myself. I didn't want to." Yin almost choked on her soup. When she looked up at him again, her cheeks were slightly red, and her ears were burning. She wanted to say something to refute him, but couldn't find the right words. "I'll have Lao Lu take you back later." Yin felt relieved. No wonder he was dressed so neatly. He probably had a social engagement tonight. Finally, she could go home. There was another period of silence. When she was almost finished eating, Jiang Yin asked casually, "Are you in your safe period?" Yin let out a sound of surprise. "This topic, I haven't calculated it." "I don't think so." Jiang Yin glanced at her. "If you're sure you're in your safe period, don't take any pills." "I didn't use protection this morning. I'll be careful about that later." Yin couldn't help but cough a few times. Thinking about the slippery feeling between her legs when she woke up, her heart pounded like a drum. She bit her lip and said softly, "You never used anything? You must have sharp ears. Or maybe the room was just too quiet." The ambiguous words were spoken so clearly by him that it was Yin who felt uncomfortable instead. She buried her head and drank water, not participating in the discussion, but her heart kept palpitating, and she always felt that the air was filled with strands of lust. Yin had never thought that one day she would have a relationship with Yin. She used to get angry when she heard the maids at home talking animatedly about his figure and punish them for their gossiping. But Yin's outstanding appearance and figure were also coveted by socialites, who always tried to inquire about him through her. One socialite's sister, several years older than her, even asked her, "Does Yin have a girlfriend?" And then asked her a private question. "He's your personal bodyguard. Do you ever have him keep you company?" She believed that Yin had also heard those words, but she couldn't see any change in his expression. She asked Yin if he had a girlfriend, and Yin seemed surprised and said no. She then asked, "Do you want a girlfriend?" Yin looked at her and said no. She also felt that Yin didn't like having girlfriends because he always had an icy face and she never saw him get close to any girl. She asked Yin again, "Then will you sleep with me?" "One sister said you're my bodyguard, so it's okay if I ask you to sleep with me." That year, she was still young and didn't understand that the word sleep had other meanings. Yin's eyes at the time seemed to be filled with black mist, but his ears were quite red. After a moment, he raised his hand and touched her head and said softly, "When Miss becomes an adult, when I—" He never finished that sentence. Now, looking back at what he said, especially that sentence, it's very meaningful, especially the words he didn't say. Yin didn't want to speculate about his thoughts, whether it was the Yin of the past or the Jiang Yin of the present. However, she still missed the Yin of the past. The Yin who could blush easily at a teasing word. The present-day Jiang Yin, although still cold, releases a terrifying ruthlessness mixed with lust. After the first time at dawn today, she was dazed for a moment and suddenly remembered herself asking him if he would sleep with her. If it was this kind of sleep, the former her would have been terrified and broken down. Jiang Yin continued to hold her tightly. Even after he had finished, she could still feel his strength, still full of vitality. He kissed her, leaving a trail of red plum blossoms on her collarbone and chest, and then, while still inside her, continued another round of conquering. The second time, He lasted a very long time, and Yun Yin felt like she was going to die several times, her cries becoming distorted and her voice hoarse. She woke up once at dawn, and she was lying on the man's arm, still breathing in the scent of his hormones. Jiang Yin was sleeping behind her, one arm around her waist, locking her in his arms in a completely controlling and possessive posture. This was something Yun Yin hadn't expected. Whether it was in the Jing circle, the Hu circle, or ordinary business circles, she had heard that they played women very clearly, each taking what they needed. So they went to hotels for a one-night stand and left immediately after. Especially people in the Jing circle, because of their special status, even if they took women to private clubs, they rarely stayed overnight. She felt that a person of Jiang Yinyan's status, even if he wouldn't kick her out of the hotel room, wouldn't sleep in the same bed with her. Maybe it was because there was only one bed in the suite. Jiang Yinyan was sleeping soundly, breathing deeply. When she tilted her head slightly, she could see the sharp curve of his jawline, with new stubble on his chin, a bluish fuzz. Men with strong desires have vigorous hair growth. She didn't like being controlled and wanted to move her body away, but she accidentally woke him up with a slight movement. He pulled her back with a contraction of his arm, holding her even tighter than before. His cheek rubbed against the side of her face, sounding sleepy, and his voice was muffled and hoarse. Hungry? Yun Yin wasn't hungry at all at the time. Apart from being tired, she was still tired, but she didn't want to be held so tightly by him, so she wanted to endure her sleepiness and find an excuse to leave the bed. She just hummed softly in agreement. The man chuckled softly in her ear. "I'll feed you." He pressed down on her, full of life and energy. At that moment, Yun Yin understood what he meant by feed you. She didn't know if other men were like this after waking up, but Jiang Yinyan's lust was even more intense and undisguised than the previous 2 times, and even lasted longer. Later, she could only beg bitterly. He asked her in a low, hoarse voice if she was full. She repeatedly said she was full, but he held her even tighter and chuckled. "I'm still very hungry." She fell for his trick and became his prisoner under him. "There are new clothes prepared in the dressing room. Go see if you like them." Jiang Yinyan saw that she kept her head down and drank water, looking like a lost deer in the forest, and a subtle feeling flashed through his heart. Yun Yin didn't expect that he would prepare clothes, and was slightly stunned, and then said softly, "Thank you." Although she was quite hungry, she didn't want to eat too much, mainly because she wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Just as she was about to get up, she heard Jiang Yinyan say lightly, "Finish it." He then served her another bowl of rice and a bowl of soup. "Yun Yin, I can't eat anymore. You haven't eaten much at all." Jiang Yinyan made her eat, but he didn't continue to eat, poured himself a cup of coffee, and continued to sit opposite her and drink slowly. "Now it's 2. She glanced at the time and swallowed the words late back down, changing them to, "It's almost evening. If I eat too many carbs, I'll get fat." Jiang Yinyan didn't expect her to come up with such an excuse, and his eyebrows twitched for a moment. And then he said, "You're so skinny that you barely weigh anything. What are you afraid of?"